Good morning. We are back. Um, we are going to start in on the lecture here for our photo retouching uh, piece. We're going to get started here with this presentation. So first off, let's get things working. Why does photo retouching matter? Well, mainly it's to enhance your picture. Every effort is going to be taken most of the times with photo shoots with people. An arranged photo shoot, you'll have a makeup artist, you'll have a hair artist, you'll have lighting people, plus the photographer with the settings they put in their camera. We'll try to get the best picture possible in the environment that you are in, but it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be what the client, the boss, shareholders, whoever wants. So you need to enhance the pictures. Now, most of the times, you're doing this enhancement after the shots are taken, after they're reviewed by the client or whomever, so that way you know how far you need to go. Because sometimes with the things that need to happen, that you can identify as maybe a blemish or something that needs to be fixed, doesn't need to be fixed by the client. Like the client doesn't feel that it needs to be done. I always speak towards the client because as a freelance artist, as a freelance graphic designer, a lot of times I was dealing with separate clients and not just one company that I was working for the entire time. So I always speak towards that type of realm of things, just get an understanding. So when you're doing photo retouching and working with it, the idea is to do things that enhance the image, not completely change it. So you still want the person to look like who they are, but you don't want to, go too far and smooth the skin out too much, whiten the teeth up so brighten the eyes up or anything like that. That goes way too far. Hair. A lot of times when you're doing things with hair, you're trying to either recolor the hair if necessary or get rid of the flyaways. If you look at this example of this young lady here, it's AI generated image, but a lot of times when you're taking a picture like this of a person with hair like this, you'll have a couple of little flyaway pieces that, little strands of hair that you need to basically retouch and get rid of. It's not unusual. It's not you know, a rare situation. It always happens, no matter how good everything is on set. Something happens, doesn't work, doesn't look right. You got to go in through the process of fixing, and it's not really that difficult to fix a lot of those things. Now, other parts of photo retouching, removing unwanted objects or backgrounds. Basically, how to cut out a person or thing out of the picture, so that way you don't have to use the background there. You're using that person or you're using that thing. We talked about that already when it came to selections, using the different selection tools, using selected mask, taking your time to mask out things like the hair and things like that. Um, so this way you get the best selection possible to be able to output to what you need without having any of the background to show up. But what if it's a thing that needs to be removed? Like for instance, outdoor photo shoots. Sometimes if the wind is blowing, there'll be some debris that will fly through and be captured in the shot. How do you get rid of that? Well, there's a couple of different ways to do it. This is three examples here: content aware fill, clone stamp, and background replacement. Each one of those we'll kind of cover today and in the subsequent videos here. There's just it's techniques. It's like with the color correction. There are so many different ways of doing some of these things that it really doesn't matter what technique you use as long as you're using it successfully. And if it doesn't work, then you do something else. Um, Exposure and contrast adjustments. I didn't put this in here well, I put it in here on purpose, but the reason why I put this one in here is because color correction is part of photo retouching. It's actually, kind of a hand in hand marriage kind of thing. When you're doing your color correction for like brightness and contrast or shadows and highlights and things like that you've been working on and that we covered already, you are doing photo enhancement. You are doing photo retouching. The color correction is, this is one of those things as a freelancer that's kind of fun. Color correction is one charge, so that's one price. And photo enhancement is a separate charge and another thing because you're using different techniques to do different things. So you want to get paid for your skill set. You don't want to just lump it all together at once. You want to try to piecemeal it out if you can. Some clients understand that trick and they will try to piecemeal you back to death. Like if you go, well, it's gonna cost you this much to do a color correction, and then it's gonna charge you this much to do that. They'll be like, yeah, no, we're gonna pay you for the whole thing all at once, and it's just a matter of that. That's triggered in the brain to actually talk about that. That's why I brought that in here. Excuse me. Another thing with color correction that we did not talk about that I'm just remembering now, the color grading. We talked about the LUTs, using the lookup tables. There's another thing that's called a gradient map that I want to try to, if I can, show you today if I remember. The gradient mapping is the same thing as the lookup tables, except it's a little more manual because you're the one creating that. It's a way that you can't really create lookup tables in Photoshop. You could pretty much just import them in from something else that's already been done. Other programs like Premiere or After Effects, you can actually make the lookup table if you needed to, but you really can't make it here in Photoshop. But you can do a gradient map, which is the same thing, same idea. It's just applying it using a different set of steps, and it's actually kind of cool. Masking and compositioning techniques, just to remind me and remind you that layer masking is part of the photo enhancement. So you want to make sure that you're doing this correctly with everything. Frequency separation. This is a fun thing. It is more complicated of steps to do, but it's a way to make sure that you're separating the texture of the skin from the color of the skin. What does that mean? A lot of times the blemishes that you may want to remove from someone's face or body is coming from their the texture level of their skin. So you could get rid of the blemish without, mixing up or messing up the color values that are there in that space. A lot of times when using things like a blurring technique, which I'll show you that to do real quick and dirty work for smoothing out skin, the thing that you will notice, not only does the blemish go away, but now the color looks like it's smeared through their face. That could be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing depending on the resolution of the picture, what the image is going to be used for. Is it just like a general picture that's going to show up on the web? Is it something that's going to be larger and bigger, highly detailed, coming out on print, or is it something that's going to be like a high res photo that you're doing for a gallery work or something like that? And the picture is going to be super big. So you need to be able to still see the skin texture. Like in this example of this picture here, I still want to see the texture of the skin. All right. But something like this little blemish right here that my mouse is covering over, I might want to get rid of that. Or some of these little pore marks, these little larger pore marks that are here across the face. You probably want to get rid of that. But if you do that with the standard blurring techniques, you're going to lose a lot of the details within that you wanted to keep. So frequency separation separates the texture from the skin tone. And it's not a easy thing to do. It really takes practice to kind of get it right. I'll walk you through it. But you are going to have to practice with it to try to make sure that you get it like you want and to be happy with it. Let's get to our next. Is that our last one? Oh, that is our last one. That was our last slide. All righty, let's move forward. Talk about what we're going to do here. So, in the photo retouching world, we have a lot of different things and a lot of different techniques to kind of cover through. So, what I'm going to do is I want to cover as many of them as I can, as simply as I can. Um, so that way you get kind of an idea of what needs to be done or what can be done within here. So let's us let's go file to open here. I want to stay within the realm of the files. I think I gave you these retouching files in this lecture group. If not, I'll add them in when I put the videos up here, so that way you'll have them. Um, let's get to them here. It'll be this folder here called Photo Retouch. This one here called Kimberly, I'll show you what's in there. I cannot give you those because I don't have permission to. And I can show them to you about what to do, about what I'm going to do with it, but I can't actually give you those files to work off of because I just don't have permission from the model to actually let everybody else get to them. But here nor there. All right, so let's talk about some photo retouching things to do. Let's talk about first the healing tools because those are the ones that a lot of people want to use for a lot of your photo retouching stuff. There are a lot of techniques that you can do to remove things out of a picture or to enhance the picture. And most of them revolve around this thing called content aware. Before the AI features in Photoshop existed, you had this thing called content aware, which was kind of like their precursor to the AI. You would select an area and say, hey, I want to get rid of what's here in this space. And so you had this thing called content aware fill. You had this other content aware removal that was available that you could use to remove things out of a picture. Whether it was a very big drastic thing, like in the example I'm going to first show you here, or whether it's a small little area, you can use this content aware to work. Evolution got to the next stage, and then you had these things called healing brushes. Now, the healing tools, there's actually healing tools, I should say, because they're not just brushes. Healing tools are different types of brushes to remove things, but you can also use it to enhance things as well. Like in the face, you got wrinkles, or you got a freckle, or you got a blemish that you want to remove and get rid of. You can use your different healing tools and patching tools to fix that, and it uses that content aware concept. Now, in the days of the AI evolution, again, it's gotten a lot better. Where one or two tools you can use to kind of do all the things that you wanted to do in the past. It is technique though. It is practice though. So don't just, oh, let me just use this one tool and just take care of everything. Not always, because you want to make sure that it's giving you what you want back and you are just removing that one thing or just reducing that one thing and not completely removing it because it still needs to be there, just be reduced down and everything still looks good. So first picture I'm going to open up here is called content aware. It's going to allow us to do this content aware fill because once I get the picture open, you'll kind of see where the issue is here. Again, it's asking me like this particular document has an embedded color profile. It is Pro Photo RGB. Do I want to change it to mine? Most of the times, yes, I want to change it to mine. So the second radio button here for convert to the document's working space, I would do that. So that way I can look at the picture. Now, let's talk about the issues in this picture. First off, picture was taken kind of at an up close shot. I would have preferred it to be zoomed out a little bit more. So there's more sky and ground surrounding my subject, which is the biker here. Just in case I need to remove things like the PA got in this shot here. So there's this shadow here of somebody that's off screen that's in the shot. We need to get rid of that. Some people also ask about the watermark here. This is called a durable watermark. I'll show you how to make your own. It's not difficult, and put it embedded into the picture. It's put in here like this because those usual copyright or trademarks or anything like that that you would see like on the side, like a little watermark that would be down in the corner, you can just crop that away and get rid of it very easily. Something like this, though, is a lot more difficult because it's part of the terrain. It's part of the sky now. So if I wanted to try to remove it, I would have a difficult time of doing it and still keep this area looking like it does with the detail and everything and kind of restore that back. So that's called a durable watermark. You definitely want to do that for most of your portfolio pieces in the digital side of things. So when you have this digital file that you flatten, turn into that JPEG, that PNG, that TIFF file that you're using for your display, in your portfolio or things like that, or your picture gallery that you have online, you want to create this kind of durable watermark because it discourages people from stealing your stuff. Not saying that they won't, because there are techniques and there's people who will try to be quote unquote experts to fix that problem that you could use because by no means is anything ever, especially in our world of AIs, nothing ever just, yeah, it's just foolproof. Nobody can break it. it can be broken, it can be circumvented and gone around, but this will discourage the general population from taking your stuff when you have something like this. So let's talk about the content aware first for the shadow here, and then we'll talk about some other things that we could possibly use besides just the content aware. All right, so the first thing that goes into this is using something like your lasso tool to lasso around the shadow here. All right, not a real tight selection, just a selection that gets some of the ground that the shadow is on, projected on, as well as the shadow itself. You want all of that selected together. The next step is actually feathering the edges of the shadow, because feathering the edges of the selection, because the selection initially is going to be a real tight selection, and it's going to be like kind of a cardboard cutout kind of effect if you don't do that second step of softening the edges. After you soften the edges, then you're going to go through your process of doing your content aware fill on the layer. Now, going through those steps, first step, as always, never touch the background layer. Always duplicate that layer. So I'm always going to right click on this layer and I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to call this content aware. Um, I'm not going to protect the layer. Right click on it and choose convert to smart object. Can't do that because these applications of this photo retouching has got to be applied directly to the layer. The protected layer cannot support those adjustments, those type of adjustments. So you want to make sure that if you're going to be doing anything like this that I'm about to show you, the content aware fill, blending pictures together with the masking, any of that type of stuff like that. So a lot of those things won't work on a protected layer. So you're going to have to do it, apply it directly. So making a duplicate layer is going to be your best and sometimes only choice. All right, using the lasso tool. I'm going to find my lasso tool, and then I'm going to check the options up here in the options bar to make sure like the first of these modifier buttons are on. The feather is at 0. Anti-alias is checked on. Usually it is, but you want to just check to make sure. One little tidbit. If you don't touch Photoshop for a few days, you may forget that these settings up here, these options that you created. So there is kind of a fail-safe, sort of. Right there, the icon that represents the tool that you're using up there in the options bar. If you right-click on that, there's two little reset options. One is for resetting the tool options for the tool you're using right now. The other is reset the tool options for all the tools within the program. Um, why is that there? Well, if you don't use Photoshop on a daily basis, you will forget what settings you put or what options you set. So that's a way to kind of, if you want to put it into your morning routine or your daily routine of going into Photoshop, when you open up Photoshop, after you open a picture that you're going to work on for that day, come up in the options bar, right click and say reset all tools. That'll reset everything to the factory default. That may be a good workflow for you. If you use Photoshop every day, kind of like I do, you can kind of remember that you set these different options and you'll put within your own routine again, select the tool, set the options, use the tool. So it's getting into that type of habit. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to go around, click and drag around my shadow here. And I don't have to do a tight selection, as you can see, right around the shadow. I'm just trying to make sure that there's a little bit of the background surrounding my subject. If I realize I didn't get enough, I need more or I need less. That's where the modifier buttons come in, where I can go and switch to the add to, and right here around the head, I can add a little bit more. A simple little quick click and drag around the shoulder here and the arm. Add a little bit more of the ground to the selection. That's what I'm doing here right now. Now, this is good enough for what I want to show you. Again, you don't have to be right and exact. It doesn't have to be right on the edge of the shadow. You actually want it a little bit further out, than right at the edge of the thing that you want to remove. It's not just a shadow, it'll be anything. If I wanted, one of this little tree line area right here to be removed with content aware, it would be going through the same thing. Now, as a check to see how well of a selection you have and how feathered the edges are, you're going to go into what is called quick mask mode. Now, quick mask mode normally is what you would have in your layer masking, where you're able to paint if you needed to on that quick mask mode or on that layer to hide and remove different parts of your picture. Your quick mask mode in this case now is pretty much used as a check against what you've selected. I don't know if I talked about it in the selection primer lecture, but just talking about it right now. Keyboard shortcut, the letter Q. Letter Q on your keyboard gets you in and out of quick mask mode. So what will happen is that you'll get this mask that either covers your shadow, like mine, or it covers the rest of the picture and shows you the shadow. It's going to do one or the other. It depends on what you set it to before or what it's been set to, currently. So to change the settings, so you can better see what you do and do not have based on what you prefer, the color of the shadow and things like that. Over here in the toolbox, towards the bottom, there's a button that looks like a square with a circle cut out. If you double click onto that, it jumps you into the options for your quick mask. Now that button, clicking on it once will get you in and out of the quick mask mode. Double clicking will get you into the quick mask options. So if you double click onto that button, you get into the options. You can choose what is supposed to be the color, what that's supposed to be the mask. The masked area, meaning that everything else, or the selected area, meaning what you have selected. So do I want the shadow to have the color on it, or do I want to have everything else have the color on it? Usually I do the masked area, but that's just a preference. Color, again, preference. What color do you want that mask to show you? Do you want it to be like this green? I think the default is red. It's like a default red. That's a default color. But depending on the picture, depends on if that color actually is going to stand out or not. And then the opacity. I think the normal opacity was like at 50%. And I just don't dig that because everything is just way too, semi-transparent for me to be able to tell what I need to check for. So I always opt to put it at 100% because it's going to stand out better for me. So that's what I do. So you go in there, you double click onto the button, you set up the options to what you want, you hit OK. And then the next time you hit the letter Q, then you'll see what you set up, the color, the opacity, and what's being shown with the color. Now, you don't really do anything in this quick mask mode anymore. If this was a class from 10 years ago, I would be talking about using this quick mask mode to, how we did in the select and mask. We're using the paintbrush tool in select and mask to paint more in or out to enhance and add to our selection or take away from our selection eventually. That's what the quick mask mode was for back in the day. And like I said, just 10 years ago, I would have been going through in that selection lecture talking about using this quick mask mode, using the paintbrush tool to paint in and paint out. You could still do that if you want to kind of modify what you're currently dealing with. But the main thing is looking at the edge of your selection. It's real, I always call it cardboard cutout kind of thing. It's very sharp along the edges, and we want to soften that up a bit. So how do we go about doing it? Well, number one, you got to get out of quick mask mode. So that's hitting the letter Q one more time to get out of the quick mask mode. Once you're out of the quick mask mode, you're going to go to your select menu. You're going to go down here to modify. And these options here allow you to modify the selection marquee. So the marching ants that you got, modifying that to soften the edge using feather, using expand or contract to increase or decrease the size that is taking up, the area that's taking up. Smooth is going to smooth out the jagged areas of the image of the selection. If you got the jittery hand kind of thing going on using the lasso tool. And then the last one, border, never used it, but it's supposed to create like an extra border. So you would have your main selection, and then you would have another selection marquee just outside of that. That would be the border. And I never understood why in the world I would ever use that. I just never saw a reason. Whatever reason they came up with using some of these options, I just never used it. So feather is the one that I use the most here. Matter of fact, it's kind of the only one that I use out of here because the others don't really necessarily need. Expand and contract, maybe, but mostly feather is what I use out of here. So when you get into this feather adjustment, basically the thing you're doing is you're setting up your feather radius. How much is up to you. Usually with a project like this, let me hit cancel to get out of here for a second and zoom back out. Let me go while I'm here. Let me go to image and image size real quick. Um, Looking at the resolution of the picture, it's 72 pixel per inch. That's a low resolution image, right? So when you're doing something like a feather, you don't have to go with such high numbers to get similar results. So if I go back to select, modify, feather, this number here for the feather amount, 5 pixel to 10 pixels, probably all you really need for something like this. If it was a higher resolution, that number probably have to jump up, to like 10 to 20 or 20 to 30 or something like that, just to get the similar feathered effect. Now, you're going to start with a number. I'm going to put in 10. I'm going to hit OK. That gets me out of that feather. If I hit the letter Q again, it's going to show me how that feathered selection looks, because now the edge of my selection is not so sharp. It's feathered. By how much? 10 pixel. If I like that, cool. I hit the letter Q and I move forward with whatever I'm doing. If I don't like that, you got two options. You can immediately undo. So you can do edit and undo. And unfortunately, going in and out of quick mask mode is a step. So you would probably have to undo a couple of steps back. So you'd have to do either Control or Command Z multiple times, or edit and undo multiple times. The other option is going back to select, going back to modify, going back to feather, and add on to what you got. So whatever number you put here now for the feather is going to add on to the feathering you already did. So if I did it at 10 already, if I add another 10, that's 20. So I'm adding 20 pixels of feather to see if that's enough. And you don't want to go too far because then you'll feather it by too much. But those are your two real options. You can either undo to where you didn't apply the feather. And again, the quick mask mode is part of that, is a step. So you'd probably have to undo a couple of times, at least 3 times back. Getting in and getting out of quick mask mode is two separate steps. So you would have to, undo a couple of steps back, reapply brand new, or take what you already have, do select, modify, and feather again, and just add on to what you got. So if I want to add another 5 pixels, I'll add another 5 pixels, hit OK, hit the letter Q again, and now it's feathered by 5 pixels more. Again, you don't want to go overboard. You don't want to go too high with the feathering number initially. You probably want to gradually build up on it. So that way you get it feathered the way you want without going too far ahead. And the quick mask mode just lets you check your work, in case you need to do that. Now I got it feathered to the way I want. 15 pixels seem to be the good thing, be the good sweet spot to work off of here. So now I want to do the content aware fill. So content aware fill, as a step, there's actually, well, there's two ways in which to do content aware fill. I'll show you the old way first, and then I'll show you the newer way. And then we'll look at some other options besides that. So if I go to edit and go down here to fill, so edit and fill, this was the first way. You had this content aware as one of the options for your contents choice. In the fill dialog box that comes up, you could choose content aware. And then if you choose content aware, you wanted to make sure color adaptation is checked on. What that does is that the color that is the ground, this is why you wanted to part of the ground in your selection. The color that is the ground is going to try to match that and cover that color over the shadow. All right, so not only get rid of the definition of the shadow that's there, but also make sure that it tries to cover up and match the color of the surrounding area. The blending, you want to have that at normal for the mode and 100% for the opacity. Preserve transparency, you usually have that unchecked in this case. If you have it checked on, preserving the transparency would, if there was transparent pixels anywhere or semi-transparent pixels, it would keep that. We don't need to worry about that. So that's why you don't need to have it checked on. All right. Set all this up. Yeah, hit OK and let it work and let it do its thing. Most of the time, it's going to be successful. I say most because looking at it for so long, you can see where that shadow is. I mean, I can still see in kind of darkened along the edges in different spots, and it still kind of makes up the shape of the shadow. If I deselect the marching ants, it kind of looks a little bit better down here in this towards the edge of the picture, but towards the tire, I can still see that outline of that shape that I created there of the marching ants. If that is a problem, no worries, you can do it again. You can go through the process of selecting the problem area again, do the select and modify and feather again. I had it at 15 pixel. Oh, by the way, another thing is that the larger of an area that you're covering, the higher you can go with that feather if you want to. And then I can go edit and fill, have the content aware choices, color adaptation, and all that like before, and just hit OK. And it's going to do its process again. And you can do it again and again in smaller spots. So once you get rid of the big area, the big problem, which was the shadow, you can go in and kind of do spot fixes in different places to kind of randomize what was created, and kind of fix the problem that way. Is it foolproof? No, it is not. It still takes a little bit of work. Like now that I've got this area right here where my cursor is sitting is a little too dark right along there, so I could run the process again. I'm not going to because there's other things I want to show you that could work a little bit better, maybe, if you employ them and employ them correctly. Again, no one thing always works. It's always a multitude of techniques that you'd probably employ. So I'm going to duplicate this background layer again. Um, no, content a where to. So now, same idea with the content aware bit, with the content aware. Except this time I don't really have to feather it. Because I'm going to use a different content aware fill that's available. It's a newer version that came out after that one that I just showed you with edit fill. Same thing, make a selection around what you want to remove, getting some of the background around that object as well. And again, if you need to modify to make it, to add a little bit more into it, you can. Once you get to this point, you can feather if you wish to. So if you want to, you can go to select, modify, and feather. You don't have to, but it is an option if you want to employ it with this. If you just decide you don't want to feather it, that's cool. When you go to your edit menu, content aware fill is there. All right. So besides edit and fill, now you have content aware fill that's available. So this one was the newer one that showed up. This one has a different interface. You're going to have a left and right, which is going to be kind of before and after that you'll be able to see. On the left-hand side is your original picture. The dividing line between the two pictures, by the way, you can move it, and you got to kind of find that spot. I'm trying to find it right at the edge of the two pictures. When you see the double arrowhead, you can, kind of click and drag and kind of move one picture split from the other side, so that way you can concentrate on one area first. So it's the area on the left. The green is what the computer is using to patch over this area that you have. Okay. So up above in the options bar, you have your paintbrush tool, and what you'll have the ability to do is do this add or subtract with a little plus and minus, and then you'll have the size of the brush that you'd be able to pick from. The size of the brush can be adjusted with the square bracket keys, like it is anywhere else here in Photoshop. Any brush tool, you can change the size that way. But the plus and the minus is what's important. With the plus, you can add more of this green, so that way you're adding more area or using, where the computer can use that space to process the patching effect or the fill. Then the minus allows you to take it away. So for me, I don't want the sky. I don't want the trees. I don't want the biker. I don't want any part of his bike to be a part of what gets patched into there. So the computer automatically figures this stuff out. But what you have the ability to do is paint things in and paint things out. So I can start to paint away as rough or as smooth as I want to the biker and his bike out of the selection process, even the shadow that adds on to the bike. Really, all I want is the ground. I don't want any parts of the biker, the background that is not the ground. I don't want any parts of that to be incorporated into this. So I can paint that away to make sure it's not added to the mix of things that's going to be looked at. So that may take you a little bit of time. If you want, you can go back here to the background, like come on, use the right keys, Maurice. To take away like this part of the mountain back range background. I want to take away the trees. And like I said, you could be very rough. You don't have to be real accurate with this. You can, paint away as much or as little as you need to with this. And what happens that the computer just readjusts and refits and gets everything to reapply to what you're trying to get rid of. Now, if you do this part here on the left, what ends up happening when you get over here to the right-hand side, let me change the split again. When you get over here to the right-hand side, it's already going to go through the process of patching over that space. Sometimes right out the box, it does a really good job. Sometimes you may have to paint in and out different parts on that left-hand side for it to improve and get better. Then, if you still want to add on to it or still see what you can get, you have these settings over here on the right-hand side that can be used to adjust what you're dealing with. Now, under sampling and options, you pretty much don't need to do anything with that section because that was the left-hand side, being able to paint over there on that left-hand side and seeing what you get there. Under fill settings is probably what you really want to come into and take a look at. You have this color adaptation and this rotation adaptation. Depending on which choice you make, it's going to change what gets adjusted to, what gets patched over. And sometimes the choice is good. Sometimes you can start seeing kind of a repeating pattern show up or some distortion that you don't like in the results. So, not saying, set it to this or set it to that, but default is the norm for the color adaptation. And for the rotation, it's set to none. That's a default. But if you want to change it, see what happens. You'll get this message when you start going into the rotation adaptation telling you that it's going to have to adjust, the picture. So give it a little bit of time to let it do its thing. Sometimes it looks good. Sometimes it looks bad. It just depends on, what you decide you want to try and see what happens. Scale and mirror. These are two check boxes you could turn on that will, again, adapt and adjust what gets filled into that space. Sometimes it's good, but sometimes you see real distortions happening and you don't like it. So just, undo that particular step, by unchecking it or what have you, or picking a different thing out of the drop down menu. See what you get. See if you like it. If you don't like it, always undo it, and change it back to something else to what it was, because what you had before was doing the job. So take your time with this and see what you get. You're going to get something that you like. You'll also notice that there will be some repeated elements from what you had over on the left-hand side. There will be some things that'll kind of repeat itself in there, but it tries to be as natural as possible. But it is there. Now, the cool thing about this particular feature, when you're doing this content aware fill, here where it says output settings, you got three different choices. You got current layer, which means the duplicated layer that I made, I can apply the patch directly to that. If I choose new layer, it will create a brand new layer just for the patch. So the patch won't be directly applied to my duplicate layer, which means you don't have to really make the duplicate layer if you don't want to. You can stay on the background layer, make your selection like we did, and then come into this content aware fill, and then just make sure you're choosing new layer so that way it applies the patch to a brand new layer above it, non-destructive. Then you also have duplicate layer, which does it makes a duplicate layer for you and then applies the patch directly to that duplicate layer. So if you forgot to duplicate the layer before you got into here, you got an option for it to do it for you. So it's up to you. I'm going to show you what new layer looks like so that way you can see that. That may be your kind of go-to choice. This is the default that's already on here. So I just want to show you what this looks like when I hit OK. So when I hit OK, I don't need the marching ants anymore, so I can get rid of those. Control D. The patch looks pretty good. It's on a layer by itself. So that duplicate layer that I made for content aware fill, it's still intact. I didn't really need to change it. I really didn't need to make it. I could have just used this content aware fill and just made this new layer with has the patch on it. It gives you the name of the layer that you applied it to with the word copy after that. So you can always double click on that to give it a new name. Let's see. Content aware patch. That works better because I'm about to show you this thing called a patch tool, which is going to kind of do the same thing, but different. So that's another way. Content aware, fill, under edit, make your selection of what you want to remove. When you get into that content aware fill interface, you start painting to paint what you want to be used as the patch. Make the right choices in the settings that are over on the right. Once you make those choices, then you just apply those choices to and you go from there. I'm sorry, somebody was calling. I had to put them on mute. Okay. Last one of these types of content aware fills. Another tool that they introduced called a patch tool. Now, what the patch tool allows you to do is similar to the content aware fill, except you'd be able to choose the area in which you want to patch over. So you can go over a large area or a small area. It's always going to start off the same way, though. You would use your lasso tool to lasso around what you want to patch over. And again, you want to get some of the surrounding area of around your subject that you want to patch over. You can feather it if you want to, which I'm going to. You can add on and modify as you need to. And you would go to select, modify, and feather by whatever amount. So I'm going to stick with the 15 pixel. After you do that, now you're going to pick a different tool. So in your toolbox, you're going to be going after the patch tool. So your patch tool is someplace that I don't see. Huh. It was right there. Okay. So in a 2-column layout, 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons down. Most of the times, the default look is, for your toolbox, you'll see what looks like a band-aid under a circle or over top of a circle. That is one of your healing brush tools. If you right-click on that tool button, you will get to your patch tool. So you'll see your patch tool sitting under there. So again, 4 buttons down in the second column, 1, 2, 3, 4. Right-click on that, and then you'll have all these different tools. The patch tool is the one we're going to look at right now. Now, your patch tool is a lasso tool. So initially, it's a lasso tool. So if you needed to, you can look up there in the options bar up there at the top. It'll give you the same options for that you have for your lasso tool, at least the first parts of it. Second part in the options bar for the patch tool is that after you've made the selection, now what? Well, in the options bar up here, you got your patch option for normal or content aware. I usually have this set to content aware. We'll talk about normal in a second because normal is like a new version, and that uses the AI, which is supposed to be smoother, supposed to look better. We'll compare. Um, the structure, I really never changed the structure number because I never really understood why it needs to be there. I think it's part of the math that it's using with the with trying to patch over this. And I think it's the higher the number, the smaller of patch areas that it's going to use. So the way this patch tool works to try to get this structure thing to make sense, you're going to move your cursor inside of your selection, and you're going to drag that selection to a different area on the picture. So that way you can use that data information in that section of the picture to patch over in this selected area. So I'm thinking that structure, because no one's ever really given me a good explanation of this, so I'm spitballing here. Structure is how many squares of information that it's trying to patch over at one time. So the higher number, you get more squares. I'm assuming better detail. But what I notice is that when I go from the lowest number, which is one, things look bad. But if I go up to the highest number, which is seven, I don't really see that big of a difference between seven and four. Because the default is at four, and it works pretty good, depending on the size of what you're trying to get rid of. Um, if I go higher, probably a little bit more on the detail. So I'd probably go with like a five or a six, maybe, if you wanted to, and see what that looks like, but experiment and see what goes on. The color, this is that color adaptation where what you're trying to patch over versus where you're pulling the information from. The higher you go with the number, the more it's going to adapt the color towards where you're pulling it from. Um, for something like this picture, probably want to go with a higher number. For something else, though, you may want to keep the number to zero or go a little bit lower than the highest number because you may be trying to use um, an area of the picture that's a different color than what you're trying to patch over. So that color adaptation is not going to be um, um, the desired effect because you don't want to pull the color. Maybe you're just trying to pull the texture over to kind of patch over the space. Because maybe you're trying to keep the shadow or the darker area, but you got to use a lighter area of the picture to kind of patch over it. That's the idea. But it's a matter of how you want to choose with that. I would probably go with a low number, like five or something like that, five or less, to see what happens from there. Now we go down here to our hatched area or to our selected area. And now what we want to do is we want to try to click and drag and find an area that we want to use as the patch. You don't want to do too many variable color changes in this area because you do want it to still look like the ground is there and not the shadow. So I would opt for trying to go like below the selected area, just above it, where there's none of the foliage or greenery and that sort of thing, because you don't want to incorporate those colors into that space as much as you can. So when you find an area that you think that you're happy with and you think you're cool with, you let go of your mouse. It's going to do the patch directly on that layer. It's not going to make a duplicate layer or anything like that. And you'll see the results that you get. And this is, the structure and the color adaptation. Let me turn this color adaptation down. Let me turn it back down to zero. I had it up at five. Let's turn it back down to zero. Ooh, look at that. That's weird. I don't know about you, but I hope you're seeing how all of a sudden this strip area right here started changing. And that is not normal. I just had to undo it. So usually you don't have to undo it. It just the undo got rid of that little darkening there that was going on. Because that was not supposed to happen. Let's try it again. So what I did is I turned the color adaptation number back down to zero to see what happened with that. Looks like the same result. Let's see about the structure. put it back down to 4, and then try again. Same area, try to patch over again. It's a little bit better, not by much. So what's happening is that the area, no matter what I go with the options up there, the area I'm trying to cover is probably too big. When you get little discolorations or little aberrations like that, you probably can't pick a good spot for it to do the patch because maybe either you don't have enough space, to adapt in there, properly, or um, this patch tool is just not going to work for what you're trying to do. Here's your options. You can lower the space, meaning that instead of, patching over a larger area, patch over smaller areas so that way you can use that smaller area and have more to kind of patch over. And you can even go back to some area that you patched already and use that as the patch over. So you don't have to do one big area all at once, like the whole entire shadow. You could do it in pieces. That's the good thing about this tool is that I can go through and I can patch over different areas repeatedly to kind of take the randomness that happens with this patch tool. But be careful and don't do too much. Like I was doing this with with just the regular patch tool using the lasso feature. It doesn't do the feather. So because it does not do the feathering aspect of it, I can see just from looking at it here in mine, I can see where some of these patches begin and end, and I can see some discoloration going on with the texture of the ground there, some distortion happening. So I don't like that. But this is what you get here from it if you go in different parts. Let us look at a different option here. I'm trying to undo back to before I did all of the patching. There we go. Let's change an option up here. Instead of this content aware option, let's put this to, did I have it at normal? No, ooh, did I undo to content aware or did I have it at normal? Hold on. No, I had it on content aware. Now I have it on normal. On normal, you have source and destination. Source is the radio but is the one that you want to choose, and it's kind of difficult to see which one you're picking because it doesn't really show you much of a difference on the click. Weird. Usually before it would be distinct, like you would be able to see which one you selected because it would look a little more pushed in on the highlight when you hover over it. But now it kind of doesn't show you a difference. Hmm. Transparent. This is if you have transparent space somewhere, like an area that's transparent that you want to use or that you're patching over. You can pick from there. Where mine says use pattern right here, I want to make sure that is not selected. So again, um, it's difficult to tell now because the interface doesn't show you really distinctively, whether you have it on or not, but you don't want to have the pattern on. So you want to make sure that it's turned off. The diffusion is set to 5. This is kind of like the content aware option with the color adaptation and everything. If you go to a higher number, it kind of diffuses and processes everything a little bit more refined, but also sometimes you lose detail that way. So you want to like the range goes from 7 down to 1. Probably a 4 or 5 would probably be your best bet here with it. Because I clicked on that use pattern, that's where it brought this goofy looking pattern in here. So I should be able to patch over that. Yeah, see, it spread that pattern out further than I wanted it to. So I got to now select bigger area. Well, actually, let's select a smaller area. Let's select the round where this pattern is. And let's see if I can patch over. And see, this is what that normal does. A lot of times that normal uh, effect will patch over and it uses what's in the environment already. So if you're not careful and you grab an area, click and drag to an area that doesn't really match texture wise, color wise, that sort of thing. It may patch over some things that you probably didn't want to have it patch over, or it may duplicate some things in that space. Like when I did this patch right down here, it duplicated what was up here. Um, and I could change that pretty easily, but it's just a matter of which one you wanted to go with. So, recapping, the patch tool works pretty well if you keep the options up here to normal, make sure source is checked, is selected, make sure the use pattern is off, and make sure your diffusion is somewhere between four, 5, and 6, probably. I'll say between 3 and 6 to give you a range. And yeah, it's just selecting. You can use your lasso tool ahead of time to select, or you can, use the patch tool itself to do the lasso selection. Even with that, you could still do the select and modify and feather to feather your selection by an amount before you actually use the patch tool. And I'll bring another picture up because I'm tired of looking at this guy. Um, that can illustrate that too with the feather. Now, some people have asked, what about the biker? Can I get rid of the biker using the patch tool or content aware fill? It's a yes or no answer to that. Yes, you can get rid of the biker if you wanted to, because I could lasso around like parts at a time or try to do the whole thing and try to patch over this. The no part, it's not going to look good because there's not enough information in this picture to patch in. So if this picture was taken in a wider angle, more information above and below him, and on the sides, then you could probably use the patch tool to, patch out him all at once, or at least in half. Like the bottom half of him, like where his body touches the ground, the mountain range in the back, you could probably patch over that as one big piece. And then when it came to his top half and the sky, you could probably patch over that. Using another part of the sky, but then you get some distortions that happen because, again, you don't have enough space to kind of take up what you're trying to accomplish, to kind of fix the problems. Too many color distortions, too many, image distortions that'll go on with that patching that big of an area. But again, it's only because you don't have a lot to work with from the start with this picture. If you had the same picture, but again, more space surroundings, then you could probably have an easier time with doing that. All right, new picture to open up. This picture is for that patch tool. Remove distractions is the name of the file. It's in that the healing tools folder there of our stuff. Again, convert it to your working profile. That works. Nice, beautiful picture. I'm thinking this is the Taj Mahal, but it could be another building similar to it, just because of the ornate, pillars and that sort of thing. And then when we took this shot, damn bird flies across the screen from where it was. So we need to get rid of that. And then we notice that there's also a fire camera. If we wanted to get rid of that, it would be the same kind of thing. Using the patch tool, how could we get rid of this bird? Well, I would do the same thing as I did before, which is lassoing around the bird, getting some of the background around it. And I probably want to get a little bit more than normal because this tile pattern is going to become a problem. Anything that has a pattern against it. When using the patch tool, you need to try to match that pattern. So from the area you're trying to remove, the area you're going to patch it with, you want to make sure things line up when it comes to these tiles. And I'll show you a bad version. Here's the bad version. If I just click and drag over here, it does the patch over. It does a pretty good job, even with just the default numbers, because I didn't change anything from before. But you see how the lines are kind of off? The alignment of the lines there are kind of off there. That is a problem. So, solution is click and drag. And as you're dragging around, you're trying to wherever in the pattern tile here, you're just trying to line those tile lines up as best as you can. I'm not even looking at where I'm pulling the patch from. I'm actually looking at the patch area itself, and I'm trying my best without my hand being too shaky. I didn't take my coffee this morning just because of this. And trying to get it as straight as possible. Get the lines lined up straight. I still didn't get it quite perfect. There's no rotation, unfortunately, of this. It'd be nice if you could, like, once you get it in there where you can like rotate it around and things like that. You don't have that luxury with this patch tool because it's applying directly to the layer. And I did it to the background layer, and I did not mean to do that, but that's okay because I'm not going to save this. But if you don't get it right the first time, again, you can just do it again. If your hand get tired or you didn't quite line it up, somebody called you at the last second and your hand twitched. But the better that the more practice you get at it, at a picture like this, the better you'll be at this with keeping your hand steady. But that's what it's going to take to get rid of that bird and keep the pattern lines of the tile where it looks right, where when you zoom out, other thing, it still looks like the bird was never there. It's, it looks fine. So that's what you want to do with that. Now, let me undo this. Oh, one thing that I will show you that's kind of cool. If you did a set of steps and then you realize you messed up and you want to bring the picture back to the last time you saved it, okay? Under your file menu, there's a command called revert. That'll revert the picture back to the last time you saved the file. So if you hadn't saved it, like me, I haven't saved this file yet. So I can do file to revert, and that'll bring the bird back, and all the changes that I did get wiped out. Okay. Let me go and show you in the history panel. If I go to the history panel, again, it's something I don't use that much is the history panel, but all the steps that I did are still here, okay, that I can back up to, but revert is now sitting there as a step, which means it can revert back, I can revert back as I need to from whatever the effect and things that I did. Okay, now back to I am going to close this file because even though you did the revert, you still, when you close it, it's still going to pop up and ask you, do you want to save your changes? I do not. So I'll just say don't save, and we'll move to a new thing. Let's go to our next one here. Let's do remove wrinkles. Let's talk about that. So remove wrinkles. Over there with the patch tool, you got a bunch of other tools. The main ones that are over there are your healing brush tools. So you have a spot healing brush tool. You have this new one called the remove tool, which is actually pretty cool. We'll come back to that one. And then you have a healing brush tool. We're going to talk about the healing brush tool first, because that's the first one that existed. It's right above the patch tool. And then we'll talk about the other two. Now, here's the scenario. You got this picture of this, beautiful young man right here. He is a man in blue shirt, number 23. If you ever go to any stock photo, in the past, stock photos, the way those were created, stock photography companies, they would go to different photographers who would shoot models, shoot at different events and things like that. And then what will happen is that the client won't use all the pictures and they don't buy them all. So what photographers would do to get a little money off of it, they would take all the pictures that weren't bought by the client and sell them to the stock photo companies. And the stock photo companies would pay the photographer a small little fee, or they would pay them like so many cents on the dollar for every time somebody bought one of their prints. So if I'm searching for pictures in like Rubberball, which was a company back in the day, if I go to Rubberball or Fotolia, and try to find this picture, it would cost me a certain amount of money to pay for the license in which to use that picture. So the purchase of that license, some of that money would go back to the photographer. Always a cool thing. And then these stock photo companies were doing shady stuff. Even Adobe was caught up in this too, doing very shady, bad things and like taking money from the photographers, not paying them, different things like that. So that became a problem. All right. So He's all over the place, is what I was getting at with that. I just went on a tangent and almost forgot what I was talking about. So in this picture, looking at his lovely face, he's getting up there in age. He wants to still look young. So he wants to get rid of the wrinkles in the face. So you look at the smile lines over by the eyes, the big dimple over there on his cheek, even on the forehead, the little furrows in the brow. We want to get rid of those. Now, here's the thing. To make this look good and to make it look realistic, you can make a person look younger. You can't make them look young. So making them look young will give them the avatar face, meaning I always say it like that, or porcelain doll face. If you ever seen a porcelain doll, or you've seen that movie Avatar, like the Blue People Avatar movie, it their faces were very very smooth and looked like they were pulled back, and that's how the person would look. That very smooth, no wrinkles, look. They're not realistic. This is an older guy. He's probably, I want to say he's at least over, 40 years of age. So as an older person with the gray hair, with the gray beard, the wrinkles going completely away is not realistic. And then comes his eyes. He's got kind of an eye droop thing going on that's difficult to remove. It's difficult to get rid of and remove. Don't let anybody ever tell you, oh yeah, that's easy to do. No, not really. Um, so because of that eye droop, because of his age, the wrinkles around his face, around his eyes especially, they can be reduced, but they can't be removed. Now on the forehead, those can probably be going. They could probably go away because they're kind of light. They're not that dark, and it's kind of easier to remove those. The bags under the eyes and the wrinkles under the eyes can be reduced, not removed. The dimple, it can be reduced but not removed. All right, that's the main thing. Make a person look younger, not make them look young. Understand that because you're going to have to sell that to people. Now, how do you do that? Step number one, you don't really need to make a duplicate layer, but you do need to make a new layer. So you can right click and you'll see new layer there, or at the bottom of the layers palette, you got the square with the plus sign to make a new layer. This is where you're going to be applying the patches. So you can call this layer patch. You can call it healing brush, like what I'm going to call it. So you can keep track of what you're going to be putting on. So you're going to be pulling information from the background layer and patching it onto this healing layer. Okay. So that's number one. You want to make sure you make a brand new layer. Doesn't have to be a duplicate. Make a brand new layer, have it above your picture, call it healing brush or whatever you want to call it there. Second step, go after the actual healing brush tool. Like I said, it's there with the patch tool. With the healing brush tool, you got to set these options up here properly. First thing is going to be the size and shape of your brush. So when you hit that drop down arrow there, you're going to have the size of your brush. Size of the brush can be adjusted with the square bracket keys on your keyboard, but try to get a brush size that's going to match the size of the blemish. So acne bumps, freckles, wrinkles like this, all those things can be softened down and kind of almost removed if they're not too dark on the skin. No matter what your skin color is, those type of blemishes on the face and body is a darkening effect. So everything gets darker. So what you're trying to do is make sure you lighten that area up. With my brush, I want to make sure the brush, as far as the size and shape of it, is big enough to just go over the blemish and a little bit outside of it. I don't want to have the brush way too big. If I try to cover too big of an area, it's going to be distorted and it's going to look bad. So I want to make sure the brush is kind of relatively a good size with that brush. So picking a size you want for the brush. Hardness. For me, I turn that hardness level all the way down. It doesn't have to be all the way to 0. I got mine at 3% right now. That's fine because you want a soft edge brush with this because you want to have that softer brush filling in those blemishes and not patching over or removing them. The spacing. This is another thing. I've talked about this in the past. I'm going to talk about it again. With the brush tools, your spacing is by default set to like 20, 25%. You want to reduce that down to around 10. So this way it repeats that brush like in a tapping, mode when you're painting with it. It takes the shape of that brush and kind of pat, 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 based on the spacing here. So I turn it down to 10%. That works for me. You want to go higher, lower. It's all on you. And then comes the shape. This is one of the times when I take the shape of the brush and I adjust for the shape. Now, when it comes to the shape of the brush, you have an angle, you have a roundness. The roundness is giving me that cat's eye kind of look. You have these in the little sample right there. You got these little circle nodes that you could change the roundness, from 0% all the way out to like 100%. Usually, I try to give it kind of an oval, elliptical kind of shape. And the angle, there's a little arrow that you can drag around in the sample there that'll change the angle. The angle is based on the blemish itself. What angle is that blemish going? So, like for instance, up here going with the forehead first, I would have an angle that looks similar to what I got right now for my tool, where that's at negative 115 degrees. you know. So that way the angle of his head, matches kind of the same angle that I'm doing with the brush. So that way, as I'm painting, it helps me to keep track of what I'm painting over. When I get over here to the wrinkles on the side of his head, then I would go here and change the angle up to something that matches along the lines that I'm trying to remove. So like right down below his eye, I would probably go at this angle that I got my brush at now. And then when I go to the side of his head, then I'd go at a different angle to get those. And I want to always go I want to move kind of in a sweeping motion, like I'm sweeping up and away, or down and away, or over and away, kind of the thing, with my movement of my brush. Technique. It's all technique and it helps. So hopefully that makes sense to you. All right, so that's the first thing, getting the brush right. Second thing is the color mode. So the color mode, you have a shortened list of different blend modes. The one that works the best with this tool is lighten, because I'm taking the darker blemishes and lightening them up, making them lighter. Normal can work, but I've noticed that normal sometimes brings distortion out a lot faster. Some of the others, you'll get mixed results when it comes to getting rid of blemishes. And you can use this healing brush for a lot of different things. But for this is what I mainly use it for. So you want to make sure that's set up like so. Source is always going to be sampled for the source. Now this aligned thing and use legacy. How can I explain this aligned? Okay. When you are using this tool, you're going to hold down your Alt key or your Option key before you start, and you're going to be able to set a target, or a source point. The source point is where you're pulling the information from off the background layer. So that would be like in a smooth area on his face. So that would be like right up here around his forehead. And I would click once and I would set that source point. Then where I want to pull that information into and apply it to the healing brush layer, this is where I would start to click and hold. And whenever I click and hold, there is a crosshair that's going to show up from that source point. So align up here. With aligned being unchecked like it is right now, when I click and drag, that source point and the target point are going to move along with each other. But as soon as I let go of my mouse, go to another spot to click and hold, the source point resets back to the same spot. So with aligned unchecked, I'm starting at the same source point no matter where I go with the click and drag on my with my mouse. Now, if you have aligned checked on, what happens is that wherever you go with your, you can set your target point for your source. You can set your source point. But now when you click and hold, that distance and that angle that you start with, that's now set in place. So now when I go to this spot and I click and drag, it gives me that angle and that distance. If I go to another spot, it's picking up a different source point with that same angle and that same distance that I had from the beginning. So it's grabbing it from a different source area. That sometimes is good and sometimes is bad, depending on what you're trying to do, okay? To get the result of what you want. Sometimes you want aligned on and sometimes you want it off. It becomes a personal preference more than anything else. But that's the result that comes about with it. All right, so aligned, I usually have it checked on for like the forehead, but then when it comes down to like the side of the face and the cheek and that sort of thing, I would turn the aligned off so that way I can use one source point to pull the information from. The use legacy, this is going to show up in a lot of different tools because of AI and that sort of thing. Use legacy is going to really make adjustments to how the tool used to work before they made improvements. It's kind of a judgment call about which one's better. Most of the times when you see use legacy in the options bar for a tool, try it out. Try how the old way worked and then try how the new way worked and see if there's a big difference. I really don't see a big difference with the legacy on or off, but that's kind of up to you. Last thing is going to be this sample choice here. I want to have the sample choice to be current and below. So it's using the current layer, the healing layer, and the layer that's directly below, which is the background layer. That's all I really need. All layers kind of does the same thing. In this case, there's only two. But if you had multiple layers here, then current and below may be the better choice. So you're not trying to pull from all of the layers below the one layer that you're on. You just want to pick from the one that's directly there. All right, so setting up these options takes longer to talk about it than to do it. Most of the times, you can set these options and you never have to change them again. You can use them just as they are. So what I want to do is, again, hold down your Alt Option key, find your source location, click there, and then start somewhere on your picture and start to click and drag. And again, that angle will be set and that distance will be set. And what I'm going to be able to do is do some click and drags across the image. You will notice that some of the wrinkles, especially across the forehead, will go away. And they'll go completely away. Some of them will just be softened down. They won't completely go away. No matter how many times you click and drag over it, it won't go away. And I don't know if you notice this, but I'm doing this on purpose while I'm talking. There's going to be a discoloration that's going to happen, a distortion, because the more and more times you go over the same area, saturation, distortion starts to happen. Oversaturation and over distortion. So you're going to get these problematic areas. Again, you're trying to make the person look younger. You're not trying to make them look young. Okay. So there are going to be times where the wrinkle will just completely disappear. Like right here in the middle of his forehead, those wrinkles are pretty much gone. But when you go to another spot, whether you sample another area or you just use your sample spot that you have, some of those wrinkles will just soften down. They won't completely go away. Okay. No matter how many source points you pull from, no matter how you set the different options, it either won't go away or you'll get this over distortion thing that'll happen. After one or two passes, leave it alone. All right. Because again, you're just trying to soften the wrinkle up, not necessarily remove it completely. When I get around to other areas, I may want to turn the aligned off. You turn this use legacy off too. And you'll sample a new source point. And you may change the shape and size of your brush. Like I want to change the angle of the brush here. So it matches the wrinkles on the side of the face. So that way I can have more of a sweeping motion up and out. And I'm going to use his cheek right here as my target point. And yeah. See, this is the healing with the use legacy turned off. It's removing the wrinkles on the side of the face instead of softening them down. If I had the legacy on, it would just soften them down. But I just want to show you this here. That looks wrong. You know, the way I'm trying to patch it using the cheek, that's lighter than what's on the side of the face. So that there is a little color distortion there. But I see a lot of image distortion too happening because of that. So for me, preference, I would turn the legacy option on, use legacy option, maybe sample up here about to the top of the temple, and then see what happens now. So with this, with the legacy turned on, it's softening the wrinkles and not making them so harsh. And some of them are gonna go away, and some of them are not. Again, with the philosophy of making the person look younger and not making them look young, because you don't want to have that porcelain avatar face going on. And I've gone a little too far right around there. So maybe undoing it, or instead of undoing it, this is where the eraser tool kind of comes into play, because you could just erase it away because it's on a whole new layer. So you're not doing anything to the original background layer. You're applying this to a layer directly above. So you're not really doing anything to damage um, anything. So that's where the eraser tool may be useful. So again, I'm just trying to make things look softer than it did, not completely remove it. Areas to stay away from. Try to stay away from hair like the eyebrows, well-defined areas like the eyes, because it'll tend to patch that in to what you're doing, and you'll get some distortions that'll happen if you happen to go across the eye or get a little too close to the eye. You'll get some color distortions and things happening that you didn't really want to have. And it's all because of either the area you're patching over or the area that you picked as your source point, and that just becomes a level of frustration. Now, does this tool work? Yes. Is it the best tool in the world? No, because it does require some finesse to get it kind of right the way you want it to be. Let's look at a different tool. So let me turn that healing brush layer off. Let me make another one for spot healing brush. Spot healing. Same thing as the healing brush tool, with the exception of a couple of things. It's not just one thing. So spot healing brush tool can do the similar job. It's just a matter of how you set the options up here. So first off, when it comes to the options at the top, size of the brush, shape of the brush, same idea, the different settings with the hardness and the spacing, picking the correct numbers that you want to use, setting that up, setting up the angle, same deal. You can set an angle that you want, and you can set a roundness, so that way you're fitting in a particular area. And then, of course, the square bracket keys will let you change the size of the brush. Where it says mode, you can use the lighten mode in this case, but you don't have to. You can keep it at normal, and it actually works pretty well. It's using a content aware type by default, so make sure you're using that, because that's going to give you the best results that I've seen. Because creating create texture weird, it tries to retain the texture, or it tries to make up what's supposed to be texture by trying to look at what's surrounding and trying to make up texture from what you're removing, and it doesn't work well. I don't know on this version of Photoshop if they improved it, but I really never saw it work very well. Proximity match is trying to look at the area that's surrounding and try to match within, and content aware works better than proximity match because the math is better. Sample all layers, you want to make sure that's checked on. You don't have to hold down your Alter Option key to set a target point for your source. It's already done. All you really have to do is click and drag across the blemish. Now, you don't want to go with too long of a drag. Short works better than longer drag, longer click and drags with this tool. So that way there's not too much of a distortion going on. But most of the times it's going to be kind of a one pass situation. You'll be able to pass over that area one time and you'll get the desired results. Now, this is for removing. So when it comes to the wrinkles on the side of the face, it's going to remove those wrinkles on the side of the face, under the eye, and things like that. So you're going to make your person look young, where you're going to completely remove. What is fun about this tool, and I don't know why they did it that way, but the way that they have this set, direction makes a difference. So you may click and drag across one direction and nothing happens. You click and drag across a different direction, opposite direction, then all of a sudden what you want to have happen is going to work. Choosing a larger area to cover versus a smaller area. I've noticed that smaller areas work better than trying to cover over a larger area at one time. You get a better result sometimes. And the direction in which you paint gives you different directions. So it's kind of an interesting tool the way that it works. And again, you can go too far. You will get distortions. You will get discolorations if you go too far trying to patch over the same area over and over and over again. So be careful about that. All right. So that's your spot healing brush tool. It works pretty well. Let me give you an example of where it can work in a different, light, a different picture. Close out of that. File to open. Last picture out of here is woman in a white button-down shirt. This picture is very fun. It's a very nice looking picture. The problem is the client doesn't like the strings going across the face. So they want you to remove the strings across the face. When you try to argue with them that's the aestheticness of it, and it's supposed to look, it's supposed to have that look, and that's supposed to be there. They're like, I don't care. I just want the strings to go away. I don't like the strings across the face. Okay, so here's the scenario. Spot healing brush. I would use the regular round brush. So I would turn the roundness back to 100%. That the angle really doesn't matter at that point. The hardness and the spacing is what you need it to be. With the 3% and the 10%, that's fine. The color mode, I want to put that to normal because I'm going over multiple colors across the face there. Content aware is my type. I want to make sure sample all layers is checked on. I'm going to make a new layer to go above. That's going to be my spot healing brush. So spot heal. See how this works. I can use the square bracket keys on my keyboard to get the brush to be just the size of the string and just a little bit outside of it. I don't want too far. Now, here's where direction and length of your click and drag is going to matter. Outside of her face and her body, if I click and drag across the string, it's going to start the process of getting rid of the string, right? And if I click and drag in one direction, more of the string goes away than if I click and drag in another direction. If I do short click and drags, it'll tend to get rid of a little bit more and a little bit more depending on the direction in which I click and drag. But because it's part of the background, it's that string in the background, there's not a lot of variables to go after. So at some point, this spot healing brush is not going to work anymore on the background there, on the string on the background. Not worried about that. I'm worried about the string across your face. When you get to this area across the face, the thing you got to be worried about is not going over the same area too many times because of distortion, and you want to kind of have a steady hand. So again, short movements are going to work better than long. So I'm going to click and drag across different parts of the string, slowly going across her face. If I click and drag too long or there's some real obvious distortion that happens, I will undo that immediately and then try again, maybe paint in a different direction or something like that, or paint shorter in the steps. Now, this doesn't just work for her. This will work for almost anything. And this was like a godsend for us back in the day. When you wanted to do something like this, getting rid of little aberrations, like I'm trying to get rid of the string from around her hair because I want to try to, select just her. So if I can get that string to not be touching her hair right there at the edge, then that's going to be helpful. Depending on the string, sometimes I may have to paint in one direction or another, depending on where the string is in relation to where she is. When I get around her mouth, right at the top of her lip where the string goes across, because the top of the lip and the nose and that crease there, I forget what that little Cupid's bow thing is called, or is it called Cupid's bow? I think that's what it's called. But I'm going to notice that there's going to be more of a little color distortion happening right around there that may be a little off-putting as I'm going across. It's actually not as bad this time as it was before. I'm trying to be a little more careful, not do such a long drag across. So that may help. But you work slow. and work methodical, and you try to get this to work as you possibly can, as well as you can. And you give yourself the time, it will work. It'll get rid of majority of the problems that you may have within the picture. All right. It'll also help to get rid of any type of blemishes. Like you see this little mole slash beauty mark slash whatever you want to call it there underneath her eye. If I want to get rid of that, I can use the spot healing brush for that too. And most of the times with something like that, it's getting the brush size to kind of fit just over the blemish. So that way you can just do a one click thing. So that way, instead of clicking and dragging across it, I'm just doing a single little one click, and that'll tend to get rid of most, if not all of it. And then probably another click will get rid of it completely. Some people talk about, well, the person has baggy eyes. You know, you got this discoloration under the eye where the eyeball, because I always have to argue with people about this. That's not a bag under their eye. That's their eyeball protruding out of their skull. And that part of the eyelid down there underneath is just wrapping around the rest of the eyeball that you don't see. So, yes, it's going to be darker because it's bending away from the light source. So, it's going to be a little darker underneath there. I don't care. I just want to get rid of it. Okay, it won't look natural. Oh yeah, just get rid of it or reduce it down or something like that. So again, reduction is better than removal. With the spot healing brush, you could try to go across that, and it should lighten it up, not necessarily remove it. If you go too many times across that area, it will do a removal or it will do a distortion that you will not like. So it'll take it too far. So you may have to kind of undo it, start over. You may even go back to the healing brush and use that with that lighten mode. That may be a better option to go with. If I go with the healing brush tool with that mode set to lighten, if I want to lighten up her eyes there, hold on, let me zoom in a little closer. Get a little closer. Don't be shy. Let me make sure my brush is right up here. Size, yeah, yeah, yeah. And everything else is correct. I'm gonna turn this use legacy off to see what happens. Yeah. And I gotta set my target, which will be under the cheek. And then try to go over this with one swipe. See what happens. Oh, that's not bad. That use legacy being unchecked, that's not that bad. Let me turn the use legacy on, and let's see what happens if I go on the other side of the face. And go across. Whoops, went too far. Still not bad. Not bad. I can see a difference between the two. There's a little more of a kind of discoloration because of where I set that target, where I saw that source point, versus over here is a little bit less of that discoloring, but you see what you get. Is that the worst thing in the world? No, it's just a matter of using it. And then let's go with another thing. Since we're here, it's another color correction. It's a color correction and photo retouching kind of technique put into two. Because what you're doing is you're going to lighten that area, or you can darken that area by painting color. You're going to paint with black to darken. You're going to paint with white to lighten, or shades of gray to kind of do in between. It's a whole different layer. So this one is a new layer, and it's called Dodge and Burn. Dodge and Burn. Now, before anybody asks, yes, there is a Dodge and Burn tool. Yes, it can do exactly what I'm about to show you. However, I don't like the tool personally because with Dodge and Burn, and let me show you where the tool is. It's a little, the icon for the burn looks like a little two hands, like a hand pinching something. Um, that's the burn tool. The Dodge tool looks like a little black lollipop underneath. Those tools came from um, in the dark room, in a place where we used to develop film. You would literally, and this was terrible, but this is where the icons come from. For dodging, you would have a light source. in the room that's not the red light, it's another light source, and you would overexpose the film in different areas, and you would have this little tool that looked like that black lollipop to block the light out of certain parts of the film as you're exposing it. So that way it would be overexposed in this area that normally wouldn't be. And then you have the burn tool, which is literally a hand holding a match. And yes, they used to help. There used to either be a candle or a match where you would literally burn the photo negative to make it darker. You're really not burning it. You're just using the soot that comes off of the candle or the charcoal or the piece of wood or paper that you're burning with the match to kind of darken up an area. The problem with that match idea is that the chemicals inside of a photo lab are volatile, which means they will blow the fuck up. Excuse my French. They will blow the hell up, and that could become a bad thing. So pardon me for that, but it's ingrained in my brain. If you ever take a well, you'll never do this anymore, you guys. My generation when I was in school, we had photo labs, in the school. So we would shoot on film, then take the negatives and develop the film inside the photo lab, and then take the negatives and make the actual photos and develop those photos. And the dodge and burning would be used with that. Now, the problem with dodge and burn is up here in the options bar. If you look at it, you got the exposure value, and then you have a range between midtone, shadows, and highlights, which means that instead of just two tools you're going with, you're actually doing six, because each you got to go to each individual range and set the exposure level, whether it's the same or different. So that means you got six tools that you got to cycle through. What I'm about to show you, one tool, set the option back and forth with that one tool. It doesn't take much. So with the dodge and burn layer that I made here, I'm going to change its blend mode to overlay. This overlay blend mode, the way it works, anytime any area that's anytime I put on this area, anytime on this layer that I paint on it with black with my paintbrush, and I paint with black as the top color, it's going to make that area darker. Okay. If I paint with white as the top color, it makes that area lighter as I paint. Okay. So what you can do, and by the way, what I'm doing to get rid of that is just undoing it. That's just the easy way to kind of get rid of it. So one of the things that you can do is this: if you paint with your paintbrush tool on this overlay layer with black, white, you will get black, white, or shades of gray. Essentially, you'll be able to lighten or darken an area pretty easily. So, like right here underneath her eye, I want to lighten that area up. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch the color to white. That's going to lighten it. In the options bar up here, the brush that I'm going to use, again, I've talked about this all the time, but just re-emphasizing again, the soft round brush, I want to use that because the hardness is all the way down to 0. The problem with these default brushes is that the spacing is automatically set to 25%. So you may need to go to your brushes panel. So if I go to window and look for brushes, no. Does it show it on the brushes? No, they don't. So I got to go to brush settings. Window and brush settings. I always say the wrong one. But under brush settings is where I got my spacing. And brush settings, I can set that spacing to the 10% or whatever. And I have to do that every time I choose a brush out of the brush panel drop down up here, it's going to go with its default settings. It's not going to go with anything that I set. So, and you'll see this red highlight that goes around this. This means that I've changed something over here in brush settings from its default set. All right. So if I pick this, so if I double clicked on that soft round brush, see the spacing here in brush settings went back to 25%. So just something to be aware of. Um, just re-emphasizing what I talked about before. So pick the brush. Blend mode is going to be normal. The opacity is the part that's going to be quote unquote fun or something that you're going to set. I usually set this to a low number, 10%, 15%, something less than 20%. So that way I can do a build-up process. That way I'm when I apply it the first time, the click and drag is putting down 10% of this white, lightening it up by 10%. And then I can go again and again and again. Every time I click and drag, it's going to add 10%, 10% till it gets all the way to 100. All right. That technique works better than trying to figure out which percentage you need this to be from the start with just one swipe. Do a couple of swipes at low percentage, 5%, 10%, 20%, something like that. So this way you can kind of control and gauge what you're doing. Size of the brush is gonna be up to the area that you're trying to cover. This size here tends to work for me. So now I'm going to start on one part and just click and drag across. And I'm going to see that it lightens that area up. And then I can do it a couple more times. All right. And it lightens it up more and more with that area. This works anywhere. So if I wanted to darken an area down, because like, for instance, like I'm seeing right here, this little, where my cursor is, it's like a little glitch or blemish or something like that. It's probably from it's actually from the string that I see. And I want to see if I can maybe darken that down instead of trying to get rid of it with the tool like I'm supposed to. Let me use the black, same 10%. Let's do a single click. And see, a couple of clicks, I can darken that area down, but I don't want to do too much because then, she has a black dot on her forehead because I didn't click like 8 million times in that same spot. So it does work that way as well, especially with small little blemishes like that. That'll tend to work. There's a little lightning effect can work, but again, lightning or darkening with that the idea of using that dodge and burn layer, that's what I call it. Doing that with the dodging and burning, do it sparingly, do it with small numbers for the opacity so you're not applying too much at one time. And it can work, but it doesn't work, 100% complete all the time. All right. Now, spot healing brush. I can use it to get rid of things like these strings on the face. It works pretty well. Then you got the dodge and burn, which you can lighten or darken different parts of the pictures as well. That'll work more it'll work on faces and portrait shots and things like that, but it can work on any and everything with these tools. I'm just showing it to you on these portrait pictures because that's what I have. Now we're going to do something with a different tool that's called your remove tool. Now, what the remove tool will do, before we do it, you're going to apply this to a duplicate of your layer. So they may have added in where you can not have to work with duplicates, but that's how this tool worked from the start. With the remove tool, when they introduced this thing 2 years ago, maybe at this time, you made a duplicate layer. It was another one of your healing brush tools, so it's called the remove tool. With the way that this thing worked, they got generative AI with the remove thing, which means that this is using its AI features, which the AI tool they use in here is called Sensei with Adobe. It's actually pretty cool. It's actually better than some things. We'll talk about that more tomorrow. Next week. But you got the ability to do an add or subtract. You're going to do add first. You're going to choose the size of your brush, which the size of your brush is, again, dependent upon what you're trying to remove. So I would make sure the brush is big enough to cover the string and not much else. Just a little bit on the outside. Now, this little button here, this is a button, find distractions. I'm not going to click on it. But what this does is kind of an automatic thing. When you click on it, the AI kicks in to try to find what are the distracting elements within the picture. So think about it like this. You're on the beach taking pictures of your loved one, and a frisbee flies across, or a seagull flies across the screen, or there's a ship in the background. or there's extra people in the background and from your subject. Find distractions will actually find those things, treat them as distractions because it doesn't feel that it's the subject of the photo, and it highlights them. So that way you could say, okay, yeah, those are distractions. Let me get rid of them. But if they're not, that's what the minus sign up here is for, with the plus and minus. The plus lets you add on a highlight yourself, and you can highlight across, and you don't really have to paint very well. I just try to aim for, being as neat with the painting as possible. So I would do something like I would click and drag in slow amounts just to make sure that I'm painting over this area and just getting the string and not getting any other parts of her, because I don't want anything else to be removed, but the string area there. And I'm making sure that I'm getting all of the string. If you got to increase or decrease the size of the brush, that's helpful as well. Um, the other options here in the options bar here. The mode right here is set to auto, may use generative AI. That's the new option that's there. The old option was, the AI is either on or off. If you turn it off, it only uses the content aware option to try to fix and remove. If you have it on, it will do great improvements to removing and restoring. So it removes anything like a blemish or anything like that, and it restores it back to what it's supposed to be. So that's the difference there. But having it to auto is cool too. And is there a way to make this go away? Do I have to hit learn more? See this? I hate those things. See, whenever you get something that pops up like that and you get learn more, it opens up this discover panel, and it allows you, if you want to either read through, which is the good thing now, read through what you're learning about or what you need to learn about, instead of like forcing you to guide you through something, like stopping what you're doing, opening up a whole new file and doing all that. If you click on any of these blue links, it will do exactly that sometimes. So be careful with this discover panel here. All right, moving forward. So that sample all layers is on. Yes. Okay. So sample all layers is interesting. With that being on there, I may not have needed to make a new duplicate layer. I could have just made a new layer and this would have worked as a patch, but let's find out. So I'm going over and painting across. And here's another little trick. If you paint a little bit and then hold down your shift key, when you click, it'll create a straight line from wherever you uh, let go of last to that new spot that you click onto. So it'll draw a straight line essentially at whatever angle. So that may help you get across the strings a little bit easier because the strings are straight lines. And you may be able to cover across all the strings, even the ones in the background. Let's see if we can get rid of all of them. We zoom out. All right, here to there. Got that all selected up. That is looking decent here. Now I would go back up here to the options bar, and this is where the check mark comes into play, up in the options bar. Clicking on a check mark will apply the adjustment. And you got to give it a little bit of time to let it think, because again, it's working with the AI. It's a little slower than it would be, depending on your internet connection, speed of your computer. Depends on how fast the AI tool tends to work. But it will get to working, and when it's done, it will show you the result. And sometimes it's very nice, like it did a great job. And sometimes you'll see distortions that you'll have to go in and fix. And I'm curious to see if it's going to make a new layer or if it's just going to apply it to this remove layer that I created with the patching over that it's going to do. Because in the past, it used to be that it had to apply directly to the layer. And and that was the old version. The newer version may not have to apply directly to a layer, probably because that sample all layers is available. So that tends to tell me that I could just make a new layer blank, do the same thing, and it would apply as a patch on that new layer, like we have with the other healing tools, the healing brush tools. Come on, hamsters. Every time it's going to lag right at the end. It's either going to lag right at the beginning, it looks like it hangs up at the beginning of the process, or it hangs right at the end. Like when you see that that sign showing you progress, when that progress gets right to the very last sliver, it just sits there and hangs there. And you're like, is it done? Is it stopped? Is it stuck? Do I hit cancel to stop it and try again? And that's usually what the solution is. Um, I'm trying to give it time. Looks like that's not going to be the case. I'm gonna have to hit cancel and let it try again. Just hit the check mark again and let it see if it does its thing. Hopefully, it doesn't hang up a second time. If it does, just know that it's going to work. And I'll just have to not be able to show it to you. So now I'm getting the beach ball of death instead of getting the progress bar. I don't know which one is worse. Usually, the progress bar is a better indicator of something happening. Usually, when I get the beach ball of death that sits here like this, I'm going to have to restart the entire program. If that's the case, then we'll just have to stop and be done, because this is the last thing I want to show you here in the video anyway. I am going to do a secondary video while this is going on. I'm going to do another video that's going to show you how to merge two pictures together using layer mask, doing a Frankenstein kind of concept. I'm going to show you what the process would be to get started on that and what it would look like at the end. So I'm going to show you that in a video when this one's done, and that's going to be in part 3, because this is part 2. I may do a part 4 to show you a couple of other things. Yeah, I will do a part 4 that will show you a couple of other things in this process of photo retouching when it comes to the smooth skin scenario, because I won't put that in with the other ones. And then that'll be part 4. And then part 5, yeah, there's 5 videos. I'm going to show you about doing body changes. Like if you want to do some digital plastic surgery on somebody. I may actually include that into the part 3, because that's a good thing to throw in there along with the Frankenstein thing, because it's a body change. So we'll look at that. And see, now this thing is hung up because nothing is moving. All right, so we're done for this one. I'm not going to sit here and waste time showing you this. We are done for this. This is the end of this one. Thanks for being here. We got 2 more parts that I'm going to throw at you, and when I get done with those, I'll post them all up here on in the Blackboard, so that way you have them. All right. Thanks very much. Talk to you later.